what has happened now recently is they're starting to look like the offensive juggernaut that they're supposed to be.
Sure.
Dude,
And that's
William
important.
Nylander is outrageous right now. I think he's found the version of himself that makes the money, like that's the $11.5 million guy. And if he can put together his A game, which we've seen a lot of the last 2 seasons, and he's bringing that to the table 70 times a year, that's pretty damn good.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's going to have his 10 games where they're like, okay, Willie, what's going on? You haven't scored a bit. But for the most part, like, he plays so good the last couple games. Like, I used to play right wing, and I was a pretty good player. That's as good as you can play right wing, man. Like, that's just elite stuff. That's
he's
as good as it gets.
Listen, when it comes to Willie, he's been connected to David Pastrnak his whole life because they grew up playing together, and they're
was
really
a time
close friends.
We had
said,
some arguments
Brian,
about that.
Yeah.
Well, there was a time where I think a lot of people said it, and I would agree that they were like, Nylander can't carry Pasternak's bag into the rink. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's the case right now.
Oh, I think he's better than him right now. Like, he's playing better than him. Pastrnak at his best, I think you still got to give it to him. He scored 60 in a season.
Yes.
The guy's had playoff performances that have been big, although Willie's been good in the playoffs too. But as of right now, you look at even the last 2 years and you pit them against each other, who do you think has had more impact on their team's success during the regular season? It's William Nylander. Like, at a minimum, he's caught up to Pastrnak, which is really, really impressive because he got paid a year ago and he hasn't slowed down. This isn't an Elias Pettersson situation where Willie got paid and said, all right, thanks. You know, I'll see what happens now. This guy, he clearly motivates himself. Berube had a great quote about him recently that he doesn't talk to Willie. He listens to Willie, basically, and tries to get a read on Willie. And Nylander
said he wants to hear him out.
He wants to hear him out. Yes. Yeah. In other words, like, Nylander's, he's thinking. Like, he's a gamer. He's a hockey nerd. He's trying to figure out what's working and what's not working. And you're right. The last few games, William Nylander has played as well as you could possibly play. Yet, I look at the top line I thought Marner was phenomenal. Was a wizard last night. Like, Mitch Marner was a wizard last night. And yet, again, it gets back to a conversation that we've had many times this year. And I kept pointing out, and I'm not alone in this, and this isn't a patting of the back. It all falls into place when Matthews is Matthews. Everything falls into place when the big dog is chugging the way he's chugging. And that goal he scored last night, like, that's him in a nutshell. Like, it's a driving downhill, I've got the puck at the blue line, and there's no way you're stopping me here. He's done it multiple times in the last week. He scores every single night again. Yep. He allows Marner and Nyes to find their role beautifully, which is what's happening. The opposition's like, okay, well, now we got to stop this guy, which clears up Willie on the second line, whoever he's playing with. Like, Nylander's playing with Pontus Holmberg. And this guy's like, just jump on my back. I'll take you wherever we got to go. And I will say, Bobby McMahon has done a great job of being like, I'm riding with you, man. Mm-hmm. Like, let me just go up and down this wing and skate fast and work hard and chip away and make the right plays and be in the right position.
That's what I like the best about William Nylander. He just goes out there, and it's Bobby McMahon and Holmberg. He doesn't say boo. He doesn't make facial expressions. He doesn't make a stink on the bench. He just goes out there and gets it done. And that wrist shot, man, like that breakaway wrist shot, it is like, it's just a side effect of scoring the goal. But when it just like goes in and it has the look of the goalie had zero chance of stopping it, that's a flex, man.
Yeah.
Well,
when you just go down there and rip it, and it's like that's in and out, and you didn't even see that goalie, you had no shot at it, and you're just not saving that.
I was just going to say, like, one of the things that I can see, like, from just being around the team every day that's probably underappreciated generally by people who don't get to do that, like, he is working at his game constantly. Nylander, I'm talking about. Like, every day at practice, like, he is there after. He's before. Like, he's working on this. He's working on that. Like, it's not – it looks like when you watch him, you're like, man, this guy's just, like, cool. He's laid back.
Yeah, freak of nature, the natural.
Exactly. But, like, he's dialed into, like, continually improving. And I think that's,
Jonas,
like –
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
That's a professional, man. That's a professional.
Man.
And not that it's necessary for the shrapnel, but I think it's a good compare and contrast. Phil Kessel was the complete opposite.
Covered as well.
Phil was the last guy on the ice, the first one to leave, but he was a natural, and he was unbelievable.
He did his job.
He did his job, and he played every single night.
Sure.
Yeah.
But Phil was very different. Where
But
Willie,
the thing is, and guys, I know this better than anybody, he's going to sit back and he might be fishing. He might be just sitting on his porch. And he's going to say to himself one day, whether he likes it or not, how much better could it have been? You know, you can be the guy that says, hey, I didn't miss games. I was, I never missed games. I was the Iron Man leader. I was this, I was that. I scored. But there'll be a point where you look back and you're like, why didn't I try to perfect the craft to best of my ability? Work on your game daily. Like, you only got about 10 years if you're lucky to do it. Like, he'll say that to himself. So that's always going to be the comeback. Like, why didn't you give yourself the best chance to be the best player possible?
Mm-hmm. And that is what is so flummoxing about, like, these three players. Because Matthews has a very similar reputation of being a guy who is uber dedicated to his craft, to his body, like knows everything he eats and sleeps and everything he does is like Drago from like Rocky IV. Like that's what I've heard through the grapevine over the years.
I've talked to teammates, they say the same thing.
Yeah, like he is.
Like in the summer, he's doing this at this time, this at this time.
Very regimented. Like textbook 2025 professional athlete. And William Nylander is clearly like that. And I think Marner is like that. Marner is a little bit different because he's built different. He's not a beast. He's not a freak of nature. But
Tavares the same way?
Tavares, exactly. Like these guys are great professionals and committed to their crafts. And again, we bring it up all the time. Like everything they've done has been exactly what you could ever ask for, with the exception of the one platform. Like that's the only thing, because they've been great citizens. Sure. They represent the city well. They're charitable with their time. They treat people well. Like that's always been what I've always heard. That they've
been incredible, all aspects of
everything about these. And we didn't come in here with the intention of tire pumping. That's not what we're doing here. It's just, I think you saying what you're saying is important, because I don't think everyone understands that, like what these guys are doing behind the scenes.
I talked to Sheldon Keefe in Jersey in December. He brought that up. He's like, I don't think people understand how hard these guys work. And it's like you watch the league night to night and you watch other teams. This is why they keep those guys, right? Like we argue about it after every playoffs, like how can you keep the team together? All these games where it's like nothing's going on. Nylander, Matthews, Marner, game over. That's why you keep them together. It just hasn't yet translated to the playoffs where it's like that advantage becomes an advantage in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It might. You know what I mean? Like we've seen it with McDavid and Draisaitl, where it's like that series is over because those guys are just going into like beast mode. And we've seen that with these guys in the regular season. We just haven't seen it in the playoffs.
And listen, they got to own that. Like clearly it's. And when we get to the
it's
playoffs,
a little Lamar Jackson-y.
It's very Lamar-like, where Lamar, he goes listen, he's probably going to win his third MVP. He is a phenomenon. Lamar Jackson is a phenomenon. And at different times within the playoffs, you can look at it and say, that's Lamar. Look what he's doing. Look how he's impacting the game.
That drive at the end of the game.
Exactly. And then you look at the fumble or the interception. You're like, what are you doing, man? That's not what you did in the regular season.
That's exactly right. People watch it, Hayes, and they're like, how come 85% of the regular season games, you're far and away the best player on the ice?
Yeah.
And how come you're not doing that more often in the playoffs? Like, because that's where you're supposed to elevate and do more than what you're just supposed to do what you're doing in the regular season. It is tougher. There is less time and space, but you're still supposed to be the best player out there.
Yeah. You have to be. That's the expectation.
You're supposed to separate from the rest of the players and elevate and be the best. And they've yet to do it come playoff time.
Right. And that's just a reality. And listen, they're going to go back for the 9th time. Like, that's the amazing thing. They've never really stumbled. I guess the Babcock, like at the end of the Babcock era, before COVID hit, it was like
young in that time.
Right, but I'm saying there was some debate, like could they miss the playoffs? Like they're kind of on the border.
Right, 1920.
Yes, there was, and then COVID hit, and there was the play-in, and everything was kind of different. But for the most part, outside of the rookie year, where they got in technically on the last weekend of the year, it was game 81. They punched their ticket against Pittsburgh on that Saturday night. It's been a formality. Like they're going to end up with 100-plus points and make the playoffs, and let's see what happens. And this year, it's going to be the exact same result.